If you work on a project for any length of time, you go through these peaks and valleys of loving and hating the project, right? So initially you're like, oh, this is so cool. This is going to be awesome. We're just going to bang this out. And then you kind of get into a valley of despair and you're like, this project sucks. Nothing's working. And then you're like, I have a breakthrough. I can do this. And then you're like, why did I even start this project? This just sucks. No one's going to like this. The reviewers are going to hate it. I'm just going to get shredded. To think like, this is awesome. This is going to be the next big thing. People are going to change their minds. And then you're ready to submit the manuscript. And you've been through let me check. Yeah, 7 rounds of revision over the course of like a week. And you're just so scared to put it out there. Well, my friend, at some point, you got to just let it go and let the reviewers do what they will. Hey folks, I'm Pat Schloss. Over the past, what has it been? Well, since the beginning of July, we've been working on a data analysis project trying to understand the sensitivity and specificity, the resolution of amplicon sequence variants. What we found is that if you use amplicon sequence variants or OTUs, operational taxonomic units, that are too narrowly defined, then you run the risk of taking a single genome and splitting it into multiple units of inference. This creates kind of a odd, I might say, situation where different copies of the 16S gene from the same genome could have different ecologies. That makes no sense to me, right? So that's what this manuscript I've been working on says. Like I said, I've been through 7 revisions of this manuscript over the past week. I just gotta let it go, right? This manuscript will never be perfect. I could just keep wordsmithing it and keep working on it and crafting it, but the reviewers are still gonna have some feedback, and we're gonna go back through this all again, right? So an analogy that I like to use when I'm talking with co-authors or trainees, it's from my own childhood. So when I was in high school, I played a lot of golf. I played a little bit of golf in college, collegiately, and I was always scared to hit the ball long. So, for those of you that don't like golf, I'm sorry. But, there's the green with the hole that you're trying to get the ball into. And if you're, hitting a long shot, there's always danger behind the green, behind the hole. And I would always come up short because I was afraid of going long and going into trouble. And my dad once said to me, Pat, have you ever gone long? And I was like, no, I haven't. So I was always short. And short, in many cases, is always just as bad as going too long. And so, again, for those of you that don't like golf, please wake up. Anyway, the analogy there is that by being too conservative can oftentimes be just as problematic as being too liberal in putting your information out there, right? That just as, you can like fly off and you can kind of just, say things without thinking or put things out there without kind of doing your due diligence. You can also like be overly conservative about putting that information out there, so to the point where no one ever sees it. And so both are bad. And, you've got to trust yourself. You've got to trust the process. You've got to trust the community. And that if you do what you think is a good job, what your friends think is a good job, put it out there. Let the world react to it and make it better. Your research will never be perfect. My research will never be perfect. There are papers that I look at and I'm just like, why did I say that? Or what was I thinking? But with the next paper, I can do better, right? And science moves this way, right? We are always doing better in science. So anyway, after this little pep talk, I'm ready to submit this manuscript. Yes, I've been through a lot of revisions. There's probably little things I could have said better and more clearly, but, it's time to give it to the reviewers and let them tell me what they think of this work. So, with that in mind, we have a few things left that we need to do before we're ready to submit the manuscript. My project repository on GitHub is under my personal account, pschloss. I would much rather have this be under Schloss Lab, which is my research group's project directory. I think I held it out separately initially because as I was developing these videos, I didn't know where they would go. We did get to the point of a paper, and I think it's important for each research group to have an account that everything is self-contained in, and that is, quote, owned by the PI. Researchers come and go, but having everything in that one directory makes sure that there's some continuity. We'll talk about this later with, corresponding authors. But by having everything within the PI's project account or GitHub account, it'll all be there. And that way you don't have to worry about people falling off the face of the earth and not answering emails in the future. That if the PI owns everything, then we have that continuity over time. So I need to go ahead and move this and rename it to the Schloss Lab. So over here, there's a settings button. And if you scroll down to the bottom, there's a danger zone. And I want to transfer ownership of this. So I'm going to do transfer. And I'm going to transfer it to Schloss Lab. And then I need to type in the rest of this. It's kind of like a sobriety check, right? If you can type this, then we know you're serious. All right, so I understand, transfer the repository. I go ahead and enter in my password, confirm the password, and this then gets transferred over. I'm going to go ahead and click transfer. All right, so now that it's been transferred, I've got two things I need to change. So the first is I've got these XXX in as a placeholder for the journal name. And also, it's 21 now, right? So we need to increment it a year. So we'll go ahead back to settings, and we'll change that up here at the top to do msphere underscore 2021. That renames it. We're in good shape. So I'm in my project root directory, which still has those X's in 2020. For my own organization, I want to rename that directory. So I'll go up a level with cd ... I'll then do mv on the current directory name to my new directory name. That's good. And I'll cd back in there. Now I need to connect the plumbing of my local repository to my remote at GitHub. And if I do git remote -v, I see this is the remote, the address that Git uses to connect to GitHub. So I need to update that. And I can do git remote set-url origin, and then I need the address for that remote. And I can go here to this green code button, and I can click the copy or the clipboard here, and then paste that in there. And if I do git remote -v again, I'm now connected. And if I do git push, everything's up to date, git status. It'll tell me that I'm on branch master and everything is good to go, and that my tree is clean. So we've made that connection between my local repository and my remote. One other thing that I might do here is if I remember my alias rRN, it's still pointing to this old directory. So let me just really quickly remind you how we might do that. So I'll do a nano tilde-bash rc. This is a hidden file that I described in a episode many episodes ago about creating aliases. This lives in my home directory, and I've got a whole bunch of aliases so that if I type rRN at my home directory, it takes me there. Well, there doesn't exist anymore, so I need to fix this. Okay, and I can save that and get out. And now if I do a period tilde-period bash rc, I'm good. And to test this out, if I tilde back to my home directory and do rRN, it then takes me where I want to be. So good. We've got everything renamed and redirected. I've also got this path name to my GitHub repository in my Schloss Lab directory already updated in the manuscript. So I think we're good to go finally. So one final thing I want to show you before we go into the submission system is that I created a cover letter. So when you submit a manuscript, you always have to have a cover letter. ASM's submission pipeline requires a cover letter. So I put this in my submission directory as coverletter.docx. I have the same basic cover letter for every manuscript I submit. I honestly don't know how much a cover letter really matters to the fate of the paper. I suspect it doesn't matter at all. Perhaps if you're submitting to like a Cell Nature Science, journals with perceived high impact, they then care more about the cover letter, but this really doesn't matter. All I basically do is say, Dear Dr. Imperiale, Mike Imperiale is the editor-in-chief. I feel it's safe to address it to him. I could say, Dear Editor, whatever. I'm happy to submit my manuscript, and then I list the title in bold for your consideration at msphere. Make sure you get the journal name right. And then I give a sentence describing, what does the work do that I'm submitting? And then, what do I conclude and why do I think it's important? And finally, one thing that I always put in is if I'm submitting the paper also as a preprint to bioRxiv, I indicate that here. The instructions to authors ask that you disclose that information at submission. So we're doing that. Okay, so this is my cover letter. Again, I put on my letterhead, I put on my electronic signature, make it look all fancy, okay? So that's also stored within my repository, and we're ready, right? Okay, so I will go ahead, and if we go to msphere.asm.org, let me zoom in here. There's a nice blue button to submit a manuscript. You've got to come up with your own credentials. So this brings me to my dashboard. As you'll see, I've got a paper I need to resubmit, a paper I need to revise, but there's a link here for submit manuscript. And this now asks us questions. Are we submitting, what layout or what format are we submitting? We're submitting an observation. And now we upload the files. The approach that I find is the easiest is to use my Finder window. And I can go into my submission directory. Again, if I have everything all together, then we're in good shape. I've got everything stored together as a PDF. So I'm going to drag and drop manuscript.pdf in here. Also my cover letter. And because this is initial submission, my text and my figures can all be embedded together in one file. And so that's all I have to do, right? Even my supplemental data is in there. So, hopefully if there's another round and I get to submit a revision for, full acceptance, then I'll have to tear things apart and kind of break things apart so that I have different figures and different files and things like that. But for initial submission at ASM, this is all I need to do. So I'll go ahead and upload the files. It will upload those files. They're pretty small, so this should go quick. And it's asking me the file type that I have here. And so this is my manuscript text file. And then this is my author cover letter. You'll see there it gave me that red warning that these were required. And I'll go ahead and click next. And so the title, running title, abstract, and a tweet, as you might recall. So let's go back here. I'm going to drag this information actually out of the Word version because it doesn't have those line numbers that kind of get in the way. So I'll copy that into my title. My running title is right here. And then my abstract. Paste into here. Hey, I was under the word limit, which is always good. My importance, I'm gonna grab here. And I think for now, I'll leave the tweet empty, and on resubmission, I'll come up with a good tweet to include in it. So I'll go ahead and click next. And because it knows me, it automatically plops in my information. This system is really nice. And that if you've got co-authors you need to add, you can find the author, that co-author, by putting in their name or by putting in their ORCID ID or even their email address, and it'll then pull it up. I did all the things here. So conceptualized curation. Yeah, I feel pretty safe in saying that I did all the things. All right, good. So I can now click save. If I had other authors to add, I could add them. And then the system's nice in that I can grab this and drag it to kind of reorder the authors. I'm also the corresponding author. In my experience, the PI has always uploaded the manuscript. So when I was a grad student or postdoc or now, or even when I'm working with collaborators, it's the PI that generally uploads everything. I suppose if you're the first author, you could do that. But I kind of feel like that's a PI move, a PI thing to do. But, there might be different practices. If you're in a lab where the first author submits, but perhaps isn't the corresponding author, go ahead and leave a comment down below. I'd love to know your thoughts on what you think of that approach versus the PI submitting everything. I feel like there's enough things that need to be signed off on, like you'll see here, right? That I'm acknowledging that all of the authors have been notified. Have I notified myself? Yes, I have notified you. Okay. So things like that, that we then need to sign off on as the PI. So now we have the keywords, and you might recall that I created a file called keywords.md. I created this file that has my keywords, and so I will go back in here, and it has room for 12, so I'll put ASV, OTU, versus ASV, ASV versus OTU. Again, I picked these because I wanted them to be Googleable or searchable. I don't know. I don't know enough about the search engine algorithms that they use for PubMed or for Google Scholar. So who knows? My goal with this paper was to be a little bit more intentional in how I pick my keywords. Typically, I get to this point and I'm like, oh crap, I need keywords. And so then I just like, you pick really bad keywords probably. And so let's see what this I says. Yeah. So the keywords you supply here may be used to identify appropriate reviewers. I think the manuscript also lists the keywords on the first page when it's finally published. Anyway, the category, there's about a dozen different categories here that we can then slot our data into. I'm going to go ahead and do metagenomics and bioinformatics. I don't know why those two are tied together. Whatever. Research areas. Let's see, what's here? So computational biology, maybe. Conduct of scientific research, no. Ecology, maybe. Human microbiome. Let's see, what works? Oh, I don't know that this really matters that much. Between 1 and 3 are required. So let's go ahead and put in microbial ecology. I'm going to move ecology down because it's not that important. And maybe I'll add, nah. I think that's good. Maybe I'll add environmental. Oh, we can only put in 3. So maybe I'll remove ecology and put in environmental microbiology. And maybe I'll take that out and put in computational biology. Whatever. We'll pick those 3, and those theoretically will help to pick editors and reviewers for the paper. Going on next. Again, I acknowledge, I guarantee that there's been no image manipulation. There's no animal use, so I don't have to worry about IRB or IACUC approval. No, I have no conflicts of interest as defined by ASM policy. No, the results have not been published elsewhere. No, there's not a companion manuscript. No, this hasn't been submitted elsewhere. You could go ahead and put in, at least for ASM, contact information for your public information officer. I don't see anybody making press releases out of this, so I'm going to skip this. Maybe that might change. I doubt it. But maybe on the next round of submission, I'll plop that information in. Are the data sets in our code used in experiments in accord with ASM data citation policy? Yes, they are. Data, yes, they are available. And then plugging in my funding sources. So again, at the end of this manuscript, I have a couple of grant numbers from NIH that I can plop in here. National Institutes of Health, put that in, that's for me. Here's another one, and then here's a third one. Oh. The system is a little bit flaky here. And then we'll do the same thing. Oh. Nope, that's not what I want. Something's going wrong in the system. Like I said, this part of the system is a little funky. National Institutes of Health. There we go. Okay, and that's for me. And I think that's all good. I don't know why it's giving me that warning message. So I'll go ahead and say, highlight me there. Next. Has this manuscript been deposited as a preprint? If yes, then we have to give the DOI number. So there's 2 ways to submit preprints. One is to go to bioRxiv and then upload the manuscript. That takes a couple days to get a DOI. So then you need that DOI before you can go forward in the system. My preferred way is to do what we're doing here, click no, and say, yes, I would like you to post this manuscript to bioRxiv. It gives you a warning message telling you that once you've posted it to bioRxiv, it cannot be undone. So I understand. So why might I go the other approach? Why might I submit to bioRxiv before I go to submit to a journal? Well, one school of thought with bioRxiv is that I can post the paper there, let it sit there for a couple of weeks, see what kind of feedback I get, incorporate that feedback, and then submit to the journal. What I have found is that most people submit simultaneously like we're doing here. If I get feedback from bioRxiv, from people on Twitter or wherever that see the paper, I can then incorporate that with my next round of review. I I guess maybe if you leave it up there first before you submit, then you make it a better paper for the first round of review. I've been developing this paper here on YouTube with you all, so I kind of feel like I've already been pre-printing this, as it were. So anyway, this system works pretty well. So yes, I would like it on bioRxiv. It is a new result. It's a regular article, and I'm going to put this into microbiology as the subject area, and I want to use CC076 so that anybody that wants to use it can use it for whatever they want, as long as they say, Pat did it. So next, again, one of the values of having something up on bioRxiv as a preprint is that this might take a couple months to get the paper published. This weekend, it could be up on bioRxiv for anybody to read. And I think that's such a game changer for scientific communication. Not only do I get feedback that I can use in my next round of submission, but also the information is out there quickly. And so if you're working on a study that could use this information, well, now you can cite my preprint. So I think that's really valuable. Yes, this version has supplemental material. It can be considered for publication online. Yes, I agree to pay the APC for open access. It's for shorter observation, it's $1,360. So it's about $1,000, $1,200 cheaper than a full-blown research article. Next. Preferred senior editor. Please select one senior editor who is knowledgeable in your area and could handle your paper. So in here, if you click on these different links, are the first letter of the editor's last name, right? So, so for example, if I look at the M's, I see Catherine McMahon, Trina McMahon, Erin Mitchell. If I do B's, there's Ira Blader, Patricia Bradford. In general, you want to kind of look through these and see if there's somebody that knows your work or that knows this area of work pretty well, right? So in my area, I suspect like Susanna Tringe or Trina McMahon would be two good senior editors. Who's your preferred editor, right? And so here then you can go see the detailed editors list to view all of the possible editors. And so again, here are the senior editors that you have to choose from. And then here are the different editors that you can choose from. Ideally, you would be thinking about these people before you're into the submission system, but you know what? Whatever. And so what I would do is look through here, and for this work, I'm looking for people that do microbial ecology work. So people like Stephen Hallam, Angela Kent. Who else pops out at me here? Doing this on the fly. So that's always a little bit hard. But there's a large number of people. Garrett Suen is someone else. And so, you know, pick from people that are listed here as being potentially good editors at MSphere, because again, MSphere has this tiered system. So I'm going to go ahead back and I will go ahead and put in 3 editors. One other thing I would say about picking editors and potential reviewers is think broadly about your research network, or more broadly than your own research network, right? So we know a certain set of people. My research network of people that I know and that I interact with tends to be a lot like me, right? A lot of white guys. So try to think more broadly. Think about, you know, in my case, who are the women that might be appropriate to handle this paper? Who are people from groups that are typically underrepresented in science? And can I perhaps identify people from those groups that could also be included? I feel it's very important for us to get as broad a coalition of people reviewing science as possible so that all people feel that they are included in the scientific process. And so this is kind of what I try to do. I try to make sure that I've got a good balance of men and women, identifying people, again, from groups that are typically left out of the process as we go forward. Next is to suggest reviewers to include. So a minimum of 3 experts who are knowledgeable in your area and can give an unbiased review of your work. Again, as we're picking editors and reviewers, don't pick your BFFs. Don't pick people that have a conflict of interest with you. Most people are on the up and up. And if an editor contacts, like, you know, your best friend, they're going to be like, Pat's my best friend. I'm not going to review his work. So try to think more broadly. You can go ahead and pick out several names of people that you think would be good reviewers of your manuscript. The editor may or may not use them. So to show you how this works, if I click Add Reviewer, it pops up this window, and I can go ahead and say, type in Patrick Schloss. Find reviewer, and I can then plop in that dude's information, right? And then save it. Of course, that would be horrible. I am not going to pick myself as a reviewer, so I can then remove that schmuck. The final section asks for suggested reviewers to exclude. I think it's okay if you have one, maybe two people that you exclude. Certainly, it's perfectly fine if you have nobody to exclude. You're living a very good life. I have one person that I usually exclude. I don't know if they ever would get my paper to review. I exclude this person merely because there was a reply all that they sent, not realizing that I was on the email, and they basically F-bombed my work. And so I kind of feel like they don't really have a good footings to stand on to give an unbiased review of my work. So I'm going to go ahead and exclude that person here. So I'll go ahead and click next. And so now is the copyright forms. Go ahead and click on that link. And at the very bottom, you could read all this. You could send it off to your attorney. I'm at a U.S. academic institution. I don't have to worry about all these things about being a government employee or the Crown or whatever. So my signature, I'll just type Pat Schloss. And I don't need to get my employer to sign it. It's not the NIH. I click there to agree, and I've agreed to the copyright form. This again brings me to my electronic forms where I can click next. This is all the information that I entered, and I can then click next. So while I was trying to come up with names of reviewers and keywords or whatnot, it was processing these files. So I click on the merged PDF. Again, I only uploaded one PDF. It's all here. I'm kind of quickly looking to make sure that everything looks fine. The key thing is down towards the end where I've got my figures. I want to make sure that my figures are in the right order, that everything looks right. I have had a few cases where I've been like, oops, what happened? But that all looks good. I can then approve that by clicking that button. I'll look at my cover letter also real quick here. That looks good. And I'll approve that. And then next. And then the moment of truth. Submit. So we now do a happy dance, and we can then click on Go to Manuscript. And this will then show the page that I will refresh frequently over the next month or so, waiting for reviews to come back. It goes through an initial phase of quality control from ASM. Usually on, again, the first submission, this sails through fairly easily without any issue. And we again wait. Over the weekend or over the next few days, I'm recording this on the Friday before the day it will be released. From now going forward, ASM is doing their quality control checking. bioRxiv is also going to get a copy of the manuscript once ASM sends it over to them. And, probably Monday or Tuesday, we'll see the preprint posted to bioRxiv. When that happens, I'll go ahead and tweet out a link to the manuscript for people to read. Something that I try to train myself is that we put things out there because we want people's feedback, right? It is scary. It is scary to tweet out a preprint or even to put up a preprint because, this work isn't published yet. Somebody could just totally destroy it and kill it. That doesn't happen, but it's scary to think that it could, right? And so if you don't want that feedback, don't put it out there, right? Well, but if you're not going to put your work out there, you're not doing science, right? You're not communicating what you're trying to do. And so it is scary to put yourself out there, to put your science out there. But we've done a lot of hard work since the beginning of July to now towards the end of February. It's really exciting to have a manuscript submitted, to have this project, at least to this phase, tied with a nice bow and submitted. It's a great feeling. I'm going to go celebrate by doing something probably really boring to most people, but we need to celebrate these small victories and be excited to submit your manuscript. So if you've never seen this process of submitting a manuscript, I hope this gave you a sense of what it was like. It's fairly easy, at least with the system that ASM uses. I've really liked it. I've really also enjoyed having papers submitted and posted as preprints before getting the reviews back on the manuscript. I always feel that, again, although it's scary to get that feedback directly and sometimes publicly, it always does make the paper better. So anyway, let me know down in the comments below here on YouTube what you think of this submission process and how easy it was or how hard it was compared to other systems. The system for bioRxiv is actually fairly similar to this, which is really nice. Anyway, like I said, I'm going to go celebrate submitting this manuscript. I'm also going to have to think about what we're going to do next here on these episodes of Code Club. If you have ideas for that, let me know down below in the comments below, because I only have a few days until I have to produce another video to share with you to help us continue to learn about reproducible practices in science and how we can make all of our work that much more reproducible and robust. Well, thanks a lot for following along this far. I'll let you know how the manuscript goes, and when we get the comments back, again, I'll share with you that experience of responding to the comments, modifying our analysis, and then resubmitting the paper. Alrighty, I'm going to go celebrate, and I'll talk to you next time for another episode of Code Club.